Hi and welcome to one more video on my channel. This one is about dodging and burning. Dodging and burning is nothing but brightening and darkening parts of the image. These terms have been drawn from the film era where the photographs were processed in the darkroom. Adobe Photoshop gives us powerful tools which will help us to sculpt light and shadow with precision. So in this video, we're going to take a look at how to manipulate images simply by using dodging and burning, that is brightening and darkening parts of the image precisely so that you can get the effect that you are looking for in the image. It is very easy to use, and the technique that we will be using today is a very simple technique. It's not how people have been using traditionally. So I like to use this method because it helps me to process my images faster and also gives me a lot of control over the entire editing process. So let's get right to it. The link to this image is available in the video description. So this is my image and I would like to manipulate this image because if you look at the histogram, you will see that there are predominantly dark areas. So if I keep my histogram here, you can see there are darker areas and the brighter areas are quite few or less basically. So what we want to do is reverse this kind of situation in this situation. So we want to darken the areas that are bright and we want to brighten the areas that are dark. So for example, the eyes need to be brightened up and the lips, the nose, the center of the face, and we would like to darken the background. So if you close and open your eyes, you will see that the brighter areas of the image are getting more prominence, and that's not what we want. We want the viewer to look at the image of the model here more than the background. Okay. So there are some fundamental concepts which you need to understand before you use the brush. If you're familiar with using the brush, you can skip ahead. But if you're not familiar with using the brush and the various settings associated with the brush, just the opacity and the flow we're going to talk about here and the mode of the brush. So let's take a simple example. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a brand new layer by clicking on this new layer button and I'm going to fill it with white. So I'm going to click on these default color swatches for the foreground and background colors and I'm going to switch over to white. Okay, so the shortcuts for the default black and white colors is D. So if you press D on your keyboard, it will give you the default colors of black and white. Okay, and the shortcut to interchange the foreground and background for black and white, or the default colors that are shown here, is X. So when you press X, notice that it will keep switching from black to white. So now white is my foreground color and I want to fill this area with white. So I'm going to go to edit and say fill with white, or I can also choose the foreground color, which is white, and I'll get white. Now I'm going to go to the color swatches and I'm going to choose red just for the sake of explanation. So right now my opacity is 100% and my flow is 100%. Okay. Now when I click on my mouse, I'm keeping it pressed and I'm painting. Okay. Notice I'm getting a full flow of red. Okay. Even as I go over and over it, it's still staying the same level of red. Now I'm going to change the opacity down to maybe 10%. And I'm going to paint once. So it's hardly visible. I'll change it over to maybe 30%. So you can either click here and type, or you can drag on that word opacity. So I'm going to type 30%. And I'm going to paint. Notice now as I keep going over it, I'm going to undo and I'm going to paint. Notice that as I keep going over it, nothing happens. It stays at 30%. Okay. Now I'm going to set the opacity back to 100%. Okay. So I'm going to change the flow to 30%, or let's make it 25%. And now as I keep the mouse button pressed and I keep going over it, notice that it accumulates the color and keeps adding 25% more, 25% more as I keep going over it. Okay. To illustrate this further, I'm going to make this a very low amount, like 3 or 5 or something like that. So I'm going to type 5 here. And I'm going to do the same thing, keep going over it and over again. So as you can see, with a low flow, I can control the amount of darkness I want in terms of, or the saturation of the color that I want, by simply going over it over and over again. Okay. So this is opacity 100%, but flow 5%. So I have to go many times in order to darken or get that color coming up. So that is the concept of flow. So flow will keep adding color as you keep going over and over the same area. Okay. Contrasting that, if we saw in the case of opacity, when we lowered the opacity, even when we went over and over the same area without leaving the mouse button, okay, it stayed at 30% or 25%. Okay. So if we wanted to, okay, I'm going to undo all this. Let's go back to the opacity scenario where we had 30% as our opacity. Now notice I am painting over this area without leaving the mouse button. I'm keeping it pressed and it's staying at 30%. Okay. Now opacity is still 30 and I paint once. Okay. And I leave the mouse button. Now I paint again. Leave the mouse button. Paint again. Leave the mouse button. So notice that as I keep going over it, it keeps getting darker and darker till I get a full red. So this is the concept of opacity and flow. So what we will be using is 100% opacity, like we saw earlier, and we'll use a low flow like 5%. Okay. You can simply type in there 5%. And as we keep painting, you'll see that it gets darker as we go. All right. So now the other concept is, so this is about the brush and how you can use it. Okay. To increase the size of the brush, you press the right bracket key. And to reduce the size of the brush, you use the left bracket key. Okay. Now this green part that you see there, the circle, is just my mouse cursor. The black part is the actual size of the brush. Okay. Now this brush that we are using is a soft brush. So if you go to the properties of the brush here on top, okay, you can see that there is a size element and there's a hardness element. The hardness has to be 0 to get a soft brush. If you use a 100% hard brush, then you will get something like this, very hard kind of output, which you don't want. Okay. So we're going to use a hardness of 0, and that's my brush setting. Now, in order to apply an effect, okay, so let's learn how to apply an effect. Let's say I go to curves and I make it darker. Okay. Now, notice that this darkening has happened throughout the image. That is because we have a white mask here. This is a fully white mask. That means it is affecting the entire image. Okay. So I don't want that. So if you click on the mask, you'll come to the properties of the mask and you can click invert. Now the mask becomes black. So this effect, if I click on the curves thumbnail here, this effect is still there. Okay, it is still dark, but it's not being shown because the mask is black. Okay, so a black mask does not show anything, or anything on the mask that is black will not be shown on the image. So now, for example, I'll click on the mask and I will go to the brush. I will select white. So remember, white shows the effect, black removes the effect. Okay. So what did we do with this curve? We darkened the image. So I'm going back to the mask. I take my brush is at 5%, okay, and I'm painting with white because I want to reveal that curve's adjustment, okay, the darkening effect. So as I paint with white, notice the area that I'm painting over becomes dark. Can you see? It's dark. Okay. If I wanted to erase that effect from the mask, I will have to use black as a foreground color. So I exchange it to black, or you can press the X key to go from white to black and paint again over it to get rid of the effect. Now the effect I put here was a darkening effect with curves, but it could be any other adjustment. So for example, if you choose a solid color layer, okay, let's say we choose green. Now the entire picture is green because the entire mask is white. So I click on the mask, I click invert. So even though the green color is there, it's not being shown because of the black mask. Okay. So now I will go back to black and white, select white as my brush color. I make sure that you're on the mask. Make sure white is your brush color. Our flow is still 5%. And as we paint, you notice that it will reveal the color in that area. Why is it showing green even though we're painting with white? Because white is only indicating that that area needs to be applied. Okay, so the effect, that is green color, needs to be applied only to this area. So I'll paint with white on the eye and it will become. Now what has happened was I painted not on the mask but outside, and therefore it created a new layer for me, but we don't want that. So I'm going to delete that layer, go back to the mask, and now paint with white. And as I keep painting with white, because of my low flow of 5%, it will keep adding green to that area. Okay. So in short, basically, whatever effect you put, okay, will be applied only to areas that have been painted white on the mask. Yes, so the mask is important. All right. So these are the concepts which we will be using to edit this picture and give it a better look. So I'm going to get rid of these two layers and we are back to our original image. Okay. So the concept we're going to use for dodging and burning is simply using curves and what we call the layer blend mode. Okay. So what that simply means is that you take a new curves adjustment. So you go to your adjustment window and choose curves, or you can go down here and select curves. So this will give you a new curves layer and we are going to call it darken, okay, or dodge, or burn. So burning and darkening is the same. So now nothing happened. As you can see, if I put this layer on or off, nothing happens because we've not done any adjustment. So if I had to make an adjustment, brighten or darken it, then it would affect this layer. But I'm going to refresh it. So I'm going to reset the adjustment back to normal. And so as you can see, there's no change. It's a white mask. So if I click on the mask, it's white. Now the blend mode here is normal. So I'm going to change from normal to multiply. Multiply gives the darkening effect, okay, on this curve. So I'm going to make sure that I'm on the mask of that curve layer. Okay, so that is also called the darken or burning layer, the burn layer. So what we want to do is we want to selectively darken only certain areas of this image, not the entire image. Okay. If you wanted to keep the entire image dark like that, that's fine. So as you can see, we have darkened the rest of the image. So if I put it off and on, you can see that the entire image has been darkened. Now we want to selectively brighten only certain parts of the image. Okay. So we're going to take a new curves layer. So we either choose one from here or one from down here. You choose curves. Okay, we are not making any adjustment to the curve, but we are simply going to change the blend mode from normal to screen. When you choose screen, notice that it brightens the image. So this is without the screen, this is with the screen option. Now, earlier we darkened parts of the image because we didn't want them, or we darkened the whole image because we didn't want those bright areas. Okay, now by adding screen, it has brightened everything up again. That is because of the white mask. So we're going to invert this mask so that this effect can be applied selectively to the areas that we paint as white. Okay, so click on the mask, click invert. The shortcut to invert a mask is Control I. So by pressing Control or Command I, you can invert the mask directly. So I have a black mask now. I'm going to go to my pen tool, make sure the mode is normal, opacity 100, flow 5%, and I have white as my foreground color, that is the brush color. And I'm going to use a big brush so that it covers the major part of the face. Okay, I'm not painting yet. Now I'm going to drag by keeping the mouse button pressed, and I'm going to paint only this area with white. Okay, notice now in my mask, if I press Option or Alt and click on the mask, it shows me the area that I've painted with white. Okay, if I put this layer off, you can see, and on, you can see the effect that we've just made. So now we have brightened this model's face. Okay, and if we want to make it a little more brighter, okay, in this case, I can simply go to the thumbnail of the curves layer here, and I'm going to brighten it a little. Okay, let's say that much is enough. So you make sure that you don't blow out areas of the skin, especially if you're editing portraits. And this curves layer, we are going to double click on that and we are going to call it brighten. Okay, or we can call it dodge. Okay, dodging and brightening is the same. Okay, so it looks nice now. So just to look at what we've done so far, I'm going to go into solo mode. To go to solo mode, where you want to show only a particular layer, you have to go to the visibility icon for that layer, press Option or Alt and click on that layer. So it's showing me only the background now without the adjustments that we made. So this is our original picture. This is with darkening. We've darkened the entire picture. And now this is with dodging or brightening, where we have brightened only part of the image. Okay. Now the reason why this area is being shown here is because of the area that we painted as white. Okay. So if you press the backslash key, it will show you a red mask where you can see the area that is not affected is shown in red and the area that is affected is shown in and is not shown in red. So that is the area that we painted in white. So if you want a shortcut just to take a look at what you have painted, that's what it's going to look like. Okay. So if you want, you can go and repaint the area, but make sure that you are on the mask itself. Okay, see, I was not on the mask and therefore it created a new layer for me. So I'm going to go back to the mask and I'm going to paint. But I guess that is as bright as it's going to get. Okay, because if you option click on the mask, you can see that it's fully white. Okay. Now the reason why we painted with a soft brush is so that there's this gradation of white to black, and that looks like a seamless edit. You can't see where the edit starts and where it stops. So that is important. Now we want to focus on the eye. We want to brighten up the eye and the lips in this area here. Okay. So to do that, we're going to take one more curves layer. So I'm going to click curves. I'm going to change the blend mode to screen. Okay. And I'm going to click on the mask and invert it. And this time I'm going to take a smaller brush. Okay. Just enough to paint inside the eye. And I'm going to paint that area with white. Okay, so that will brighten up that area, and I'm going to make it a little bigger, and I'm going to paint in the middle of the face so that it looks better. Okay, now it has become a little more between the eyes. So as I said earlier, if you change back to black and paint in that area, it will remove the effect from that area. Okay, so this is before and this is after. Okay, so as you can see now, these are the areas that we painted, and by pressing option and alt on the and clicking on the mask itself, you will be able to see the areas that you have painted. And if you have missed out some areas, you can go back to white and paint those areas. So if there are any gaps, you can fill them in. Then click back on the mask icon and you will see the effect coming up there. Now, in case you feel that you need some more in the eye, so you can go to the mask and paint again with white, but I guess you won't get any more because it's already taken up its entire scope. So we were going to add one more layer now of curves, and we are going to screen it again, set it to screen. Notice the eyes look nice now, but we don't want the effect throughout the image. So I'm going to click on the mask and invert it. And this time I'm going to zoom into the image and I'm going to take only the eye. Okay. And I'm going to make my brush small enough to only go into the eye area, and I'm going to paint it with white. Okay. Similarly here, I'm going to paint it with white. So that will give me the screen effect, the brightening effect in this part of the eye as well. Okay, so if there's any other area you want to brighten, you can just click there. And now when you zoom out, so this is before and after. Okay, you want to still brighten up that area, double click on the thumbnail for the curve and increase the light. Right, so this is what my image looks like now after these edits. Notice that we've only used curves and we've only used blend modes like screen and multiply. Okay, so this is before and this is after. So you can get nice, you can do nice cinematic edits and stuff like that. Now if you want to add a kind of mood throughout the image, okay, you can take another curves layer and you can, so let's say we want to add a bluish effect since the background is blue. So we go to blue and we'll take the black point and bring it up so that it creates a blue haze effect. Okay, so you take it as much as you want. Again, notice that it is applying to the entire image because it's a white mask. So from this white mask, we are going to deduct the model's area so that that area will not be painted blue. So to do that, click on the mask, go to the brush, click on black, sorry, because we want to remove the effect. Okay, and now increase the size of your brush and simply paint away. Okay, so this is before and after. So we've given a nice hazy effect to it, and you can keep adding your effects accordingly to make your image better. Okay, so this is now our final image. So if you want to compare both side by side, what you can do is go to image and choose duplicate, merge layers. Okay, merge all the layers in the duplicate, and now go to window, arrange, and tile all vertically. Okay, and you can also go to windows and you can choose match zoom. So both the images will be here. Now this is the final image that we have, and here if you go back, this is the original image. So I'm going to put off all the adjustments, and that is what it looked like. So this is what your final image looks like in comparison. Okay, so much better image and more appealing, and all done simply using curves and using a simple technique of just painting in the effect wherever you need it. So this is one of the most powerful ways in which you can quickly edit any image. So this one took a little while because we are learning, but when you start using it, you can create, you can really go fast with it. So what I have done is, um, let's go back to the original image. Okay, so I'm going to say consolidate all, and what I normally do is I create an action. So I have an action here called DNB. But for you to create an action, what you need to do is, so for you to create an action, what you need to do is simply go to your actions menu, actions panel. If you don't see it, go to the Windows menu and choose actions. Okay. And in that panel at the bottom, you'll have a plus icon coming up there. Okay. So you click on that plus icon and you call this dodge and burn. Okay. You can give it whatever function key or color that you want. So I'm going to choose yellow and I'm going to choose record. Okay. So now I go to curves. I choose screen. Okay. I'm going to call this lighten. Okay. And I'm going to click on this mask and choose invert. Okay. Now I will create a new curves layer and I'm going to choose multiply. Click on it, invert, and I'm going to call it darken. Right. Then I'm going to go to my lighten layer, mask. I'm going to go to white. I'm going to go to the brush. And I'm going to set the flow to 5% here. Remember, all this is being recorded. Okay. I'm going to make sure the opacity is 100% and my mode is normal. Okay. All this is recorded now. And these are the two layers that will be created by this action. So once you finished recording this action, what you need to do is go to the actions panel and click stop recording. Okay, so now as you can see, there is a new action that we've created called DNB2. So let's take another image and apply this action. So I'm in the actions panel. I've selected DNB2, that is dodge and burn 2, and I'm going to run it. So notice the moment you run it, it has created two layers for you, two curve layers. One is called lighten and darken. It has set the brush to flow 5%, 100% opacity, normal mode. Okay. And the color you can change back to white. So now we have this ready made. All we need to do is go to the mask, and the area that we want to brighten, we simply paint on that area. So it will brighten that area for me. And if you want to darken an area, you can simply go to that area and paint. It will darken it for you. Okay. So take a big enough brush and paint the background dark. You can also highlight the hair if you want by painting it. Okay. If you want to double this effect, you simply duplicate this layer by pressing Command or Control J. Now it's too harsh, as you can see, so you can reduce the opacity to your liking. This is before and this is after. Okay, simply by using the action that we made. The principle is the same. We use a screen layer with curves to lighten the image, and we use a multiply layer with curves to darken the image. Whatever areas you paint with white on the mask will be affected, and whatever areas you paint with black will not be affected. All right, so that's about it. And that's the simplest and fastest way that you can use dodge and burn to manipulate your image. Okay, do subscribe to my channel so that you can learn faster with the new videos that I'll be posting shortly. They will cover various techniques that you can use in Photoshop.